In the heart of Manhattan, the most luxurious restaurant of the city gleamed under chandeliers worth more than an average home. Richard Cole, a billionaire who loved attention, sat proudly at the center table. His presence commanded the room, with photographers, business partners, and strangers sneaking glances. Richard had built his empire. Through aggressive deals and endless self-promotion, he enjoyed one thing above all, reminding the world of his wealth. That night, as waiters brought him wine worth thousands and meals plated like art, he leaned back with a smirk, ready to put on yet another show of extravagance. The evening was a spectacle in itself. People whispered his name as they passed by, admiring his custom-tailored suit and expensive watch glistening under the lights. Richard thrived on these moments. He waved at fans, signed autographs, and bragged to his dinner companions that money always solved every problem in life. When the waiter delivered his final dish, Richard raised his glass with a booming laugh that echoed across the restaurant. His confidence filled the room, making others feel smaller. Little did he know within minutes that confidence would shatter into a silence he could not control. As the night came to an end, the bill was discreetly placed in front of him. Richard hardly looked at it. Numbers never mattered to a man of his wealth. He handed over his sleek black credit card with a smile that screamed superiority. The waiter disappeared toward the register, and Richard leaned back in his chair, already imagining the envy on everyone's faces when they saw how easily he paid for the most extravagant night in the restaurant's history. Yet in the corner, the waiter's expression turned uneasy, his hands trembling as he returned. "Sir, I'm sorry," the waiter began softly, lowering his eyes, "but your card has been declined." The words hit the room like thunder. Suddenly, every clink of glasses and chatter froze. All eyes turned toward Richard, whose smirk faded instantly. He blinked, confused, then laughed nervously. "Run it again," he demanded, his voice a little too sharp. The waiter nodded, hurried away, and returned moments later with the same pale expression. "It's declined again, sir." Whispers began floating from one table to another. Phones slipped out of pockets. The mighty billionaire was facing the kind of embarrassment he had never known. Richard's face turned crimson as he reached for another card, then another. Each one declined. His breathing quickened. Laughter broke out from a nearby table, cruel and mocking. Some guests smirked, delighted to witness the fall of a man who had spent years boasting about his untouchable wealth. Richard's dinner companions shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to stay or slip away quietly. Every second felt heavier than the last. For the first time in his life, Richard realized that money wasn't saving him. The very thing that had always been his shield was now his greatest humiliation. The waiter, clearly uncomfortable, whispered, "Sir, perhaps you can call your bank?" Richard glared at him, unable to respond. His hands shook as he stuffed the useless cards back into his wallet. The audience around him no longer saw a billionaire. They saw a desperate man stripped of pride. Guests whispered cruel jokes, their laughter growing louder. Richard sat frozen, his empire of confidence crumbling in front of ordinary people he once considered beneath him. He wanted to vanish, but pride kept him rooted. His entire reputation felt as though it was unraveling before hundreds of judgmental eyes. Just as the moment reached its peak, the sound of small footsteps broke through the heavy silence. A little girl, no older than 10, walked slowly toward Richard's table. She wore worn-out sneakers and carried a faded backpack that looked like it had been used for years. Her hair was tied loosely, and her clothes were simple, almost shabby compared to the glittering restaurant around her. At first, people frowned, confused by her presence. Some wondered how a child like her had even entered such an expensive place. Yet her calmness was striking. She didn't look afraid of anyone. The girl stopped right next to Richard's chair and gently tugged at his sleeve. The billionaire looked down, startled, his pride already battered. Guests leaned forward in curiosity, phones raised, eager to capture every second. "Mister," the little girl said softly, her voice clear enough for the entire restaurant to hear, "I can help you." A ripple of laughter spread across the room. How could a child, clearly poor, help a billionaire drowning in embarrassment? It seemed absurd. Yet the determination in her eyes silenced the chuckles. No one knew what she was about to do, but they sensed it wouldn't be ordinary. The billionaire sat frozen, his pride shattered, as the little girl's small hand tugged gently on his sleeve. Gasps filled the restaurant, and every eye locked on the unlikely pair. Richard Cole, the man who once claimed money ruled the world, was now being approached by a child who seemed to have almost nothing. Her calm, steady gaze cut through the noise of judgment and laughter. In her innocence, she saw a man in need, not a billionaire. "Mister, I can help you," she whispered again, her words carrying a weight no one could have expected. The crowd erupted into chuckles, some shaking their heads. How could a poor child possibly help a man whose wealth had once seemed infinite? It sounded ridiculous, almost insulting, yet the girl didn't hesitate. She reached into her faded backpack and pulled out a crumpled dollar bill. Worn from use, slowly, with trembling hands, she placed it on the table in front of Richard. The room went dead silent. The laughter faded, replaced by stunned disbelief. That single dollar, so small in value, carried more meaning than all the riches Richard had ever flaunted. Richard stared at the bill, his throat tightening. He had spent his life buying respect with money, but here, in the most humiliating moment of his life, respect came from a child who gave without expecting anything in return. His eyes filled with tears. The restaurant that once felt like a stage for his pride now felt like a mirror reflecting his emptiness. He leaned down, his voice cracking, and whispered to her, "You've given me more than money. You've given me humanity." The words surprised even him, but they were the truest he had ever spoken. A hush fell across the room. Even those who had mocked him moments earlier now felt the sting of shame. Phones that had been raised to record his downfall kept rolling. But now the story being captured was different. No longer was it just about a billionaire's humiliation. It was about a child's pure kindness shining brighter than wealth. Some guests wiped their eyes discreetly, while others leaned closer to witness the impossible. In that instant, the billionaire and the little girl shared a bond stronger than status, wealth, or power. The tables had truly turned. The video spread like wildfire across the United States within hours. Clips flooded social media under captions like, "The dollar that humbled a billionaire and a child taught him what money couldn't." News anchors replayed the moment, praising the little girl's courage and compassion. Ordinary people connected deeply to the story because it reminded them of something money could never buy: human dignity. Richard's empire of wealth had been replaced by a new reputation, one that was far more powerful. He was the man who had been saved by a child's kindness. For days, Richard couldn't stop thinking about that night. The dollar sat framed on his desk, no longer just a piece of paper, but a symbol of transformation. He realized he had built skyscrapers and corporations, but had never built anything that truly mattered. The child's generosity haunted him, pushing him to act. With determination, he began setting up a foundation in her name, dedicated to helping poor children across America. This time, his wealth wasn't a weapon of pride. It was a tool of change. For the first time, he understood what it meant to give. When he invited the girl and her mother to his office weeks later, the moment was as emotional as that night in the restaurant. She entered shyly, still in her worn sneakers, but Richard stood to greet her with the respect of a king meeting a queen. "You gave me back my humanity," he told her, sliding a thick envelope toward her mother. But more importantly, he revealed the foundation's plaque, the Emily Grace Foundation, because $1 can change the world. The little girl's smile lit the room, brighter than any fortune Richard had ever held. That one crumpled dollar became more than a story. It became a movement. Schools across America taught the tale as a lesson in kindness. Families shared it at dinner tables. Strangers donated to the foundation, inspired by a little girl's selfless act. Richard Cole, once mocked for arrogance, now dedicated his life to helping others. And though he still had billions, he no longer measured wealth by numbers in a bank account. True wealth, he realized, was found in the smallest act of kindness. That single dollar had changed him forever, and through him, thousands of lives were changed too.